This episode of the Wedding Film School Show is brought to you by MusicBed, the best music licensing platform for wedding filmmakers. Head over to themusicbed.com and enter our code WFS on checkout to get a free month on your annual wedding subscription. Now, on to the show.
Is our industry structured in such a way that anyone can retire?
So the question really is there long-term security as a wedding filmmaker?
The second you stop producing the volume, you're not making any money ever again.
Yep. You're hustling for your next dinner. But eventually, what happens when you get that injury? What happens when you simply aren't as good?
There's so many other factors besides your health that might make you unable to sell weddings, even when you could still shoot them. When we have an industry that doesn't allow for people with different skills, because they can't jump through every hoop, they just can't jump through any hoops. You're just thinking the wrong way. Like, you can't have a conspiracy where you get every single person to agree to not do a wedding film for less than X dollars. There's always going to be a need for a lower cost option in any market.
I'ma get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Film School Show. My name is Jared, and today we have another topic where we're kind of just going off the cuff.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a good topic, but it's the topic that a lot of, I think, wedding filmmakers in general kind of have in the back of their head. It's kind of like they don't want to touch it because it's a little bit causes a sense of dread in their head because there's not really a good answer.
Yes.
So today we are here to talk a little bit about what some possible answers could be. So Jay, what are we kind of getting into
I would
today?
say, like, it's more than anything, it's kind of like really job security and life after weddings, but it's not exclusively any of those things. It's kind of like this idea of, like, it started when you were kind of bringing up, like, basically all these booking agencies that you don't like, and you were like, let's talk about this. And I was like, well, the problem is I know a lot of people who need those jobs. Right? So it's like, why do they need those jobs? Well, because the industry is structured in some ways that if you cannot just book all your own weddings, but you're still a good shooter and you want to do it, there's no other alternatives.
Right.
For their skills to make money, and they need a living. And then it kind of just pushed us into this whole, like, what do they do when weddings are gone?
Right.
Right. Like, is our industry structured in such a way that anyone can retire?
Right.
Right.
So the question really is there long-term security as a wedding filmmaker?
Yeah.
Because how many wedding filmmakers do we know that are above the age of
And we mean, like,
40?
financial security too. Like, not like, what does longevity look like shooting weddings? Which is a kind of a different question. It's like, because it's like, what about even when the weddings are done?
Right.
Yeah, it's like,
But it ties in. I think it all ties.
It does tie
ties
in. It does tie in.
So how many wedding filmmakers would you say are above the age of 40 that you know?
That I know a lot,
Yeah.
but that are in the industry, like average.
Yeah.
And we were talking before. It's like, it's kind of hard for me to say the median age of the industry because there are some OG camcorder warriors that are still out there. And maybe they're not
Crushing
on
Craigslist,
yeah,
crushing
yeah,
Facebook
they're
Marketplace.
Just, like, they established themselves in that first wave of wedding filmmaking, and they adapted. They're still in the industry.
They still don't edit in a non-linear editing platform.
Well, they might. Who knows? But I think, like,
Still deliver on tape.
in general, I think it's a young man's game.
Yeah.
I think, like, there's probably, I don't know, less than 10% of the people doing it.
Right.
This is me just literally making it up, like, based on the people I interact with.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's tough because I feel like there's, like, always, like, this sweet spot of age. It's like people get into wedding filmmaking from, like, 30 to 35, and they usually don't make it past that.
Yeah.
It's like they're, like, either like, I did this one job and it sucked, and so now I want to try something else, and I'm going to try wedding filmmaking.
Right.
That seems to be a lot of people's journey.
Yeah. I think there's kind of a different tiers of, like, people that phase out, right? You have your initial person who gets into it and is just like, yeah, I did a couple of wedding films. Like, I'm into it. I'm into cameras. I like to have gear. And I filmed a couple weddings and experienced it. And it just wasn't for me. And then you have other people who are really trying to create a business. And it's just like they try it for a couple years, 2-3 years. And they're like, this is really hard to make an actual living. Maybe they get a job doing something else, and then eventually their grown-up job takes over, right? So that's another kind of tier person. You have another person who made it, who's like pulling in, that golden 30 weddings, making $120K a year, let's just say as an example. But I think for that person, a lot of times you hit this glass ceiling of like, okay, now I'm 40 years old. Can I keep doing this? Because generally, like, we probably know maybe like 5% of the industry, and I think that's being generous, goes past age 40. Like, there aren't that many older wedding filmmakers out there that are relevant, that can still, edit. And whenever they are out there, they're completely the industry leaders, right?
Well, and 40 is even young. Like,
it is young. It is young in general, but for a wedding filmmaker, someone would look at that and be like, those people are ancient. That person's Ray Roman.
Well, yeah.
Right?
And so the real question is, how many 55-year-old wedding filmmakers do you know? Because most people aren't retiring by the time they're like in their 50s. Most people are retiring in their 60s.
Sure.
That's the real question.
Yeah.
It's like, you need, in your retirement age, you need those last 10 years of employment to really round out anything you're going to do after in your golden years. And so, like, this idea of like, is really the question we're actually asking is wedding filmmaking actually a legitimate career option for people?
Right.
Because a career is something that gives you security after the career. That is really how you should be defining a career. Like that's why people call them starving artists. It's not a compliment. It's like, oh, I sell paintings. Okay, that's great. You sell paintings. How many do you sell? Oh, I sell 10 paintings. Overpriced paintings for $10,000 each. Okay, paint another one. Like, that's it. It's like you pretty much are running a service-based industry, and as the second you stop producing the volume, you're not making any money ever again.
Yep. You're hustling for your next dinner.
Every time it's sing for your supper until you die. And I think, like, wedding filmmaking is an art form that's really challenging to do. Like, you could conceivably make your best paintings when you're 70.
Right.
And you might still love it, and that's great. Like, it's a viable option to paint till you die. It could be a viable option to shoot wedding films till you die. I don't want to, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm 60 years old, you're saying I'm not relevant. No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah. I'm
just saying, like, literally, you could hit 60 and physically be unable to do what you used to be able to do.
Yep. I think the right way to kind of frame this conversation is, what is a sustainable model for creating a wedding film company? Or how are you preparing your exit strategy?
Mm-hmm. And, like, what is the industry able to do for you? Like, what is this model of the industry that is the industry hostile to actually creating what it needs to create to give people these opportunities?
Right. So we're kind of operating on a principle of, like, the wedding industry is, when it comes to wedding filmmakers, is a pretty immature field, right? It's an immature career, if you could, right? If you're comparing it to other self-operated type businesses, like a plumber or an electrician that maybe works for themselves, or even somebody that works in the hospitality world, is a waiter or a bartender or whatever. There are models for that allow for longer term.
Well, the industry has, by being part of one part of the industry, you can naturally be part of another part. Like, you can transition in and out of roles because the industry is mature.
Right.
It has a infrastructure.
Yeah.
And, like, almost like a chain of command. It has like a natural progression and flow.
If you want to hire staff, you can be like, I'm looking for a wedding film editor, right? Mm-hmm. How many wedding film editors do you know that don't
even
also
more
shoot?
So, how many studio managers do you know?
Right.
Like, people who, like, versus like how many people you know that are managers at restaurants.
Yes.
And then owners of multiple restaurants.
Yes.
And then like, oh, there's literally people who just invest in restaurants. Like there's so many, it's such a mature industry. In our industry, like the average business is pretty much, hi, I'm a wedding filmmaker, and I literally am the sales department, I'm the editor, I'm the shooter, I'm literally every single part of my wedding business. There's no margin to hire anyone else. I actually have been trained that it's bad to hire anyone else, and I never will hire anyone else.
There's a stigma to it.
Yes.
A wrong stigma, we think. Right?
Yes, and my plan is to make $120K for the next 20 years. It's like, that's great. So you have $2 million during your entire earning potential of your adult life. That's better than many, for sure, but it's certainly not, if you don't play your cards right, it's not like you can just retire, stop doing it. Like, and you definitely can't get hurt.
Right.
Like, or something like that, which, believe it or not, people get hurt a lot doing this industry. Like, I could go out and hurt myself any weekend. Shooting wedding films.
We all know photographers, wedding filmmakers that, all of a sudden have had like knee issues or back issues.
I know a guy who had to retire because his ears.
Yeah, they can't do the work anymore. And that's some industries, but I think in some industries you can move roles, right?
Sure.
It's like I used to be the cook, and now I'm a manager where I can sit in the office.
Well,
and
baseball is a
run
good
things,
example, right?
Sure.
Like, people play baseball, and then they might hit the top of the industry, right, and become a major league, or maybe they don't.
Yep.
And maybe they become a high school coach if they don't hit the top. Maybe they become a major league baseball player, like Justin Verlander.
Yep.
Justin Verlander can become a broadcaster. He could work in any front office he wanted to. He could become a coach at a profession. Like, our industry,
or a sportscaster, or a scout, or whatever.
Pretty much whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
Because he's around all those things, and it's got an infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so why does it have the infrastructure? That's the question. It's because they hire people. They have jobs. Like, if you're an industry that hires no one, you're an industry that has nothing for people to do.
Right.
And like, we hire no one. Like, oh, I have an editor. Yeah, you have this you have an overseas person, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but like, that you're paying. Would you, like, the real question you have to ask yourself as an industry is, would you pay someone else what you would want to make to edit a wedding? And if the answer is heck no, you might have a problem as an industry. But, and my thing with price is, that's why I think we should be raising our prices. It's not because of the value of what I'm doing. It's like, no, it's the cost of what you're doing. The cost of what you're doing is what should be part of what informs your pricing.
Yeah. Especially when there are plenty of willing people to pay what you're willing to charge as you're raising prices. There are. I think the baseball's kind of comparison, I think, is really interesting because it's very true. Like, it's relevant in that baseball players play until they're like 35.
Yeah, we're all players right now,
like
right?
40. Like, we're all playing the game right now. We're learning, we're growing, we're increasing our stats, right? But eventually, what happens when you get that injury? What happens when you simply aren't as good as the younger guys coming up,
or you
and
just
they
can't
replace
speak
you?
You can't speak the visual language or the storytelling,
or just speak to 20-year-old brides. Like, there's you can't relate to them anymore.
There comes a place where no one accidentally gets naked in front of you anymore.
Yeah, they're like, this just creepy old dude. He's 40, and you're like, oh, that's me now. Like,
yeah,
and neither of us are 40 yet.
I'll be 40 in like a few days.
Oh yeah. That's right. So this is a very good conversation to have. So we can talk a lot of smack about 40-year-olds.
Yes.
Still, but yeah, I think it's. I think the comparison is really good, and it just kind of begs the question of like, what are some ways that you think wedding filmmakers can create a business that has a longer term longevity in the industry?
And it's not all the macro stuff. Like one wedding filmmaker can't make everyone hire editors or create
Right.
studio. Like,
Do you have to have a studio?
you have to get your own thing together, and like a lot of people need to get their own thing
Yeah.
together, and then it will create more opportunities, and it'll be better for the next generation of
Right.
wedding filmmakers. But I think like there's a couple ways you can go, because I think at the end of the day, first of all, it doesn't matter if you stay in weddings. Just you got to just retire and have some money.
Yep.
And you got to, hopefully you enjoy what you're doing. Most people are not going to make it to this point, which is they have a 20-year career in their industry. They do really, really well for themselves. And at that point, they're just done working.
Right.
I don't think most people are going to make it to retirement in wedding filmmaking.
Right. How old is Ray? Like, I don't
Uh,
even want to guess because he'll roast us if we're wrong.
Ray's in his 50s.
Is he 50? Okay. Yeah. Ray, I thought you were 40 too. Yeah.
He's got to be low 50s.
But he's been doing it for a really
he
long
might be
time.
49, but
And he's still working. And he charges a lot more than you or I ever will.
But Ray has like one of the most reputable brands.
Right. But he's still working. He has to still work. He hasn't gotten to a point where
Freaking
he's been able to
athlete.
retire. Yeah.
So I think like he's one of the few people who maybe could work as long as he's working.
Sure. He probably maybe could retire with what he's charging, but he is probably like
But
you
it's-
and I where he just likes money.
It's not just even about the money. It's like he's still getting booked.
Right.
He's still working.
Right.
Like he can work. Most people won't even make it past the first year of their business.
Yeah.
So I think, like there's the people who work until they retire. Then there's the people who shoot for a period,
Yeah.
like we'll say like 5 to 10 years, do pretty well for themselves, but then they're just done. They're done with weddings. They get burnt out, or they're just have more opportunities and they're moving on, and like they're moving into another industry or into commercial work. And I think that's a pretty good plan. That's a pretty good path for people. It's not as easy as people think, because I think commercial filmmaking is not a one-to-one switch.
Right.
Like it's just because it's not about the cameras. It's about like
It's an entire different culture, like, and also I would say the same thing with commercial work, where commercial work is also a young man's game. Like, if you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to get to 40 and then start my career in the commercial world, it's like you're going to have to start as a PA and work. You're starting over in a lot of ways, unless you can
start
get
your own
clients.
thing.
You start, but then you're still starting your own studio, doing that, like. Or maybe you're shooting, you're sending it out, like, but you're still having to come up with some kind of business or brand.
Well, yeah, and for sure, it's like that's hard. A lot of people won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm always like, when people are like, I want to get into commercial, I'm like, good luck trying to do that. Like,
And if you think there's a lot of like bottom feeders in the wedding world and a lot of competition in the wedding world, wait till you get into the commercial world, because it is way more cutthroat.
well, and also just like so inefficient. Like,
Right.
I've had gigs that are $10,000 gigs that the person takes freaking 100 days to pay me.
Right.
And
right.
like I have this other job I'm
You have way more autonomy.
quoting right now, and it's like
Yeah.
taking 4 months to get the quote even done with the person, because they can't even. It's like
Make decisions.
It's
You're
such
not
a-
talking to the decision maker.
It's not like everything it's cracked up to
Yeah.
be. And
With wedding filmmaking, you sell a product, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm selling to you. That's what I love about wedding filmmaking is like, hey, this is what I'm going to give you. You're going to buy it, and I'm going to do it my way. And you want my product.
Yes.
With the commercial world, it's much more of like, well, this is what we want you to make.
well, and this
And
is
if
what
it's
we
not-
need for our website, and like
Right.
this is what we need.
Yeah. I mean, the point of this is not to trash the commercial world.
No, it's
just
great.
to talk about, the pros and cons, like, and to really kind of help people just think through, like, what are the good things about the wedding industry? What are some things that maybe you have to think about when you're developing
Well, if you
your
want to
business?
move into commercial, you better start now. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
It's like you
Yep.
need to do them concurrently.
Yep.
It's really all I'm saying.
Yep.
And a lot of people, so that's one thing. They move into commercial, or maybe they just move into a totally different industry.
Yeah.
Like,
They start working in healthcare or
they have
insurance or
yes, who knows?
whatever, real estate.
Something they're interested in
Ah.
that maybe they can use their video skills, or they maybe just work for a company doing video.
Yep.
My guess would be that's probably the least, but some people do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's even hard because, like we were talking about, there's plenty of outsourcers out there. So it's like, if you just want to work for someone else editing someone's video, it's like, Why is someone going to pay you what you're charging your rates at when they could just have someone else who's just as good in, overseas doing that? So it's tough.
And I think the easiest people are just part-time people. Like, that's the easiest.
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
just doing this part-time, like, great.
To pay for
Like,
your snowmobiling habit or whatever.
if you're doing this part-time and you have another job, this could be your retirement.
Right. Well, that's why wedding filmmaking and really the wedding world works so well for part-time people, right? They're just weekend warriors. Like, hey, I have my job. It pays me, 6 figures.
Can you imagine
whatever,
if you were like
5
making
figures.
like shooting like 20 weddings a year and you have a full-time job and you're making, even if you're just making $60K,
Yeah.
but all of it was going into your retirement
Yeah.
for 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, you just
But-
crush.
Like,
It's a great retirement plan. Yeah. But that just, what we're trying to say is there's a lot of things working against our industry maturing. It's not anyone's problem. It's not, we're not trying to say like, oh, it's your fault for not running a studio, that the entire industry
or
isn't
it's
mature.
just educators' fault for
There's-
training you a certain way.
There's so many things working against our industry moving forward and maturing, and just a lot of forces right now, like that we consider. I don't think it's a lost cause necessarily, but yeah. So talk about maybe. Should we talk about maybe what we do in our?
Yeah, it could be
business?
interesting. So
Yeah.
like we
think it's interesting. At
so
least
we have a studio,
right.
in like, but like a lot of people have a studio,
Yeah.
right. So I think like the difference with our studio is we have employees. We don't just have contractors, which I know plenty of studios have employees.
And
but
we also have contractors,
we also have contractors, but we pick and choose based on what's best.
roles, and yeah.
And we also pay ourselves a salary that's a fixed salary,
Yep.
Jared and I. We don't just take our money and put it in our hands. We give ourselves bonuses because we own the business.
Yep.
And so, but we pay ourselves a salary, and we also use our business to invest in a couple of retirement things that we do with a financial advisor.
Yeah.
And so the business runs with margin, right? And I think that's like the mindset shift that does need to happen for people is like, you are running a thing that costs money. The business is in itself a entity. That it's not just like, oh, I made this money. It's the business made this money.
Right.
And then I pay myself, right? Even if you pay yourself just a percentage in your salary, but my encouragement to most people is to pay yourself a fixed salary and then do bonuses
Based on profit.
based on how you're doing, but
Yep.
live on your salary.
Sure.
Live on your salary and your saving and your retirement. So like your business is like, there's cost to run the business. So like say you always hire a $400 second shooter for every wedding. Okay, every time you book a wedding, you knock $400 off right there. And then you have a base salary of $70,000, $80,000, whatever you want to pay yourself, $100,000. Maybe that's your base salary. Okay, you need to book 25 weddings. A certain percentage of those weddings immediately goes into your salary. Everything that's left over, that's your profit, or that's your investment in your next thing. But it's like, that's how we run our business.
Right.
Is like, first of all, we don't need to be at the weddings. We have a studio, which means I don't need to be there.
Yep.
Second of all, I have a salary and I have a 403B, which is a retirement, like a 401k or whatever. And so the business is pouring into my own retirement. And so I have a fixed income, and then we have bonus income based on how things go, right? We're doing distributions because we're an S Corp. So that's how we run our business. We have an S Corp, and we pay ourselves in predictable ways and we budget extra money so that way we don't have to do everything. And so we're not paying ourselves as much as a lot of other people are making with their business. I think people would we made over $1 million last year, gross, as a business.
Individually.
In our pockets.
Yeah.
We
in
took,
our vaults, like Donald Duck's vault.
Yes. If we told you how little we made out of that, you would probably not be interested in running the business that we run.
Yeah.
Some of you make more money than us.
Few of you.
Today
Yeah.
you make more money than us.
Yes.
But I don't think a lot of you are going to make the same amount of money in 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I will.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
Is like, are you setting yourselves up to live the life that you want in 20 years, not just today?
Right. Right. Exactly. Like that's kind of, and we started our business together, always kind of thinking that we were going to run a studio. I don't really know why we made that decision. It probably started with our name when we decided, like,
Well, 'cause
we weren't going to name our studio J&J Productions, but and then we're just like, you know what, we should bring more people on to just help. And
I think
like,
we came from like a framework of team, from like
team education,
production environments we were
Yes.
in. And so like, we didn't start with weddings. We started with commercial
Yeah.
and production. And that was our framework. And so we came from an industry framework that was team friendly and studio
and came
friendly.
from a world that was much more sustainable. And so we were just like, well, this is how you need to structure.
This is what a business is.
Yeah, if we want to be successful long term, this is what we have to build.
We didn't know anything about, and wedding filmmaking
Right.
wasn't like mature, and so we didn't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I think we were just like, well, we want to do this for as long of a period as possible. So this is what we're going to do. And honestly, I think for us, we were like, no one else. There wasn't a model for us. But I would also say the good thing about the business that we've learned about is it does kind of make for a more sustainable type of industry.
yeah, I don't want people to think we're like master planning it.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
we didn't know what we were doing, but like we kind of lucked into a
Yeah.
better, like a good business model.
But it does provide that sustainability of like, we have employees that are working with us that are like Kyle for a long time was just editing Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And it allowed him to become, in my opinion, probably one of the best wedding film editors in the entire world. Like, he's a great editor. He might, like, I don't know. I know a lot of editors who are really great, but in terms of the amount that he cranks out, at the quality he cranks out, like, he is one of the most professional, like, talented people definitely in the country. Like, and he started right here, like 5 years ago, editing full time. That is a job. That is a real job. That is possible. That, if more people ran studios like ours, I don't want to toot our horn too much because there are a lot of ways to do it. But this is just a way that is a very sustainable way. I think we would both agree that not everyone can run a studio or wants to run a studio or should run a studio the way that we do. But I think this kind of model does make it a
More
little bit
people
more
definitely
sustainable.
should, because it would like the guys I mentioned at the beginning who are like, well, I need the money from working with
Right.
I don't know, one of those terrible companies that everyone hates.
Yeah, those booking agencies that we won't mention. we
Well,
probably
like,
have mentioned.
Oh,
on the
I shoot
podcast
with
before.
George Street,
Yeah.
and I need that income. I shoot like 20 times a year with George Street and another 15 times a year for myself.
Yep.
There's a lot of people like that who maybe would be better off shooting 50 weddings a year and not editing anything
Yep.
and not
Right.
booking anything because they're not that good at it, but they're good at shooting, and that's all they actually really are interested in. And wouldn't that be cool if more people could do that?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like, wouldn't it be cool if more people could book 220 weddings
Yeah.
and not have to shoot them?
Yeah. And I would say more kind of role-based positions, like, hey, I just want to second shoot for weddings. I want to be a professional second shooter. Like, that is a job option. And then you could, maybe fill up your week with commercial work and kind of split it 50-50. Like, if there are more people like that, then people like us who want to run a studio could be like, hey, I'm going to give you 20 weddings. Here are the ones that they are. They're like, great, let's line me up.
You look at commercial, like I know of several places I can go hire anyone I need to hire.
Yeah. The problem is when everyone is trying to run their own show, they will never line themselves up as like, well, I want second shooter gigs. They'll be like, no, I'm going to keep myself open so I can book all my own weddings, which is like,
Or I'm not a second shooter. I'm a lead shooter.
right.
That's
and-
who I
and
am. I'm decreasing my brand.
It's a little bit of ego instead of just being like, hey, I'm going to get paid and I'm going to get paid long term.
I actually think the biggest issue with our industry, Jared, is that no one budgets for anything but their salary. Like the average person making money is taking all the money.
Yeah.
And so when they need help, they have to get the cheapest possible help,
Yeah.
which means overseas, like for editing or shooting. It's like a Craigslist thing. And like I will say this, some people are budgeting for their shooting because like we all love shooting. Like shooting, that's the valuable thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to pay I would only pay $800 a day for like all the people run their mouth about shooting and how much they pay their second shooters. I'm like, okay, so your business sucks is what you're telling me? That's great. But so you're paying someone $1,100 to second shoot? Yeah, because I value them. Okay, that's great. And how much do you charge? Oh, $5,000. You paid 25% of your money? And it's like they're not thinking about it right? Because there's no like it's not like they think, oh, my only cost to running my business is paying for this second shooter. It's like,
right.
So you have no gear. You don't have to replace your gear. You don't pay for any marketing. No.
But also, do you know how much a camera op is making in Los Angeles right now?
Not $1,100.
Not $1,100 a day in most cases. Sometimes
thing about
a Gucci job, but
these business people, they're not business people, so they think that the skill that they're doing is the valuable thing. That is not the valuable thing. There's a reason why in the corporate world, the people who make all the money are the salespeople.
Fair.
And the business owner. So it's an issue of sales and liability.
Yeah.
You sell the thing and you're liable for the thing. That's the big money. They're absorbing all the additional costs, the insurance costs. They're not running their business in a smart way. Mm-hmm. And they're definitely not putting a budget. And this is why I say all this. They're definitely not budgeting for them to be able to take a back seat in their business, which means you need to have everything in your business you need to be replacing yourself with. Mm-hmm. And then they're definitely not investing in their retirement. Mm-hmm. And those are the two things that kill our industry.
Yep.
It's like people don't budget for replacing themselves and they don't budget for anything past wedding filmmaking.
Yep.
They just think like, I'm going to make more and I'm going to make more and I'm going to make more. And that's everyone's business plan is, how do I charge $10,000?
Yep.
It's like, what if you never charge $10,000? What if you only charge $5,000?
Yeah. They think it's an endless staircase, but then it's like, when you look around, like we were saying at the beginning, it's just like there's a drop off eventually where you just will not get hired anymore for whatever reason.
We're all barreling towards this cliff.
Yeah.
Of no longer being relevant or no longer being able.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be something that takes you out of the wedding filmmaking game.
Or someone that eats your lunch.
It's not like being oil baron.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we should get into that industry, all being oil barons.
Yeah, that'd be smart. Yeah, so I think, what we're talking about is like ways to think about like either your exit strategy or, how you're actually going to create a business model that...
Yeah. Why don't we dig into that a little?
Well, we talked a little bit about like exit strategies from the wedding industry a little bit. We said...
Did I say savings? You should save.
Yeah.
Like I think for most people... The ideal exit strategy is make a ton of money, become that $10,000, $20,000 wedding filmmaker, and actually budget to save.
Yep.
That is a lot. That's a relevant journey. You shoot until you're done. Then you're done working, and you live off the money you made as a shooter.
Yep.
And a wedding filmmaker.
At the same time, we're kind of talking about a lot of wedding filmmakers who probably don't even make enough money in their 10-year career, 15-year career even, to be able to save that much, to be able to live on, like retire at 40, like that's a lot of money that they need. That's 25 years that they have to save for making that.
I would say like if you can if you can get to 50 in wedding filmmaking, you've like way past, like you've really like a 30-year career in this is like incredible.
Yeah. Close to unheard of.
I know
there are a few, yeah, but I would say I would pair this with savings, is investing and finding ways that you can spend your money building other streams of income. Mm-hmm. I think real estate is a way that
which
you can
also
do that.
Is back into not spending all your money.
Yeah, no, not spending all your money, investing your money in things, starting another business that makes money in and of itself. I think real estate is a really solid way to do that. Dax is a guy who's seen a lot of success doing that. Like I think he has like 5 properties now. And so they're wedding filmmaking, and he's also kind of doing that dual income kind of thing. You could get to the place as a 40-year-old where if you have a few properties, you could live off the income from those properties eventually after paying mortgages and whatnot. If you do it right, like you can actually do that. That's a solid way to do it. Doing Airbnb, whatever it might be. And I think this world of real estate, there's not a lot of expertise that you have to learn, like in comparison to like going to school, learning.
Well, even in comparison to the other
professional.
thing we were talking about, which is like running a studio. Like,
Right.
you have to have a lot of skills to run a studio.
Right.
Like that's one path.
Yep.
That's the path. You do some real estate. I've done real estate. I don't think I'll be doing that, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, having a business and multiple businesses
Yeah.
that is profitable when I'm not there, and like this is brand building, right? Like I have a brand that is bigger than me, and it doesn't require my physical presence. Like, I think planners know me, but the average person who interacts with our business has no idea who I am.
Yeah.
Like when I show up, they're not like, the owner's here.
Yeah.
Maybe if we tell them, but in general, like
Yep.
I just show up and they're like, yeah, Jason. Like to them, I'm just any stop go love shooter.
Yep.
They don't care.
Yeah. So we talked about some exit strategies. We're talking a little bit now about ways to succeed in the industry, creating essentially a brand. And you kind of have an interesting take on like what a brand is, which is a little less on the marketing front, which I think a lot of people would assume when you say the word brand, it has to deal with like marketing, advertising, etc. You always talk about it much more as a business in the business sense. So tell me a little bit about what you mean with having like a long-term sustainable brand.
Well, a brand is an entity, right? A brand is a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a logo.
Right.
A brand is like, and part of that is your reputation, and part of that is your visual identity, right? And like, but some of that, a lot of it is like things that are a little more abstract, like reputation and awareness and all those things. But at the end of the day, it all is really just, what do people say about when you're not around? And is, if the brand is you, okay, that's a legitimate brand. Like, you know, Ray Roman, even though he has associates now, but like it's called Ray Roman, and like he's the brand.
Right.
And he's always trained that, by the way. He's like, you're the brand. And that's a lot of people train that in wedding creatives, photographers, and so they're like, you're the brand. And there's a lot of positives to that. It's definitely a lot more straightforward, right? But if you're the brand, is that limiting your brand?
Mm-hmm.
And for Ray, it's not, right? If you're at the top of the industry and like your plan is to make like $300K or $400K, like become some uber successful filmmaker, maybe that's great. Maybe like you being the brand is the right way to go, and you're gonna just be smart with your money and put it aside and work as long as you can and build a nest egg, and when you're done, you're done. That's awesome. Like that might be what you're able to do, but for most people, they're not going to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to build a studio, then you have to build a brand that's bigger than you.
Right.
It has to be like, because it's like, are you building a brand that makes money for you, or are you just doing a service? Are you just rendering a service? Like the person I mentioned about the paintings, right? So if someone has to make the painting, then they're just rendering a service. But when they can make prints of their painting, and just because it's Van Gogh, sell it. Mm-hmm. When they can have T-shirts with a Van Gogh, when they have art exhibits that are Van Gogh, that are 3D, like Van Gogh, no one owns a Van Gogh. Mm-hmm. They own things associated with Van Gogh's brand. Now, he didn't do a great job establishing that while he was alive, but like
other people built his brand
for
him. Yeah.
But that's a good example of when art becomes a brand, right?
Yeah.
Where it starts to make money in a self-perpetuating kind of way.
Yeah.
When like,
even though the creator isn't the one doing the perpetuation.
yes. Right. And it's like having a studio allows you to have that.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, I think just having a personal brand, but really just being willing to let other people do it for you.
Yeah.
He's really
so,
worked.
so someone who's done this successfully as kind of a self brand, and someone who has like a good personal brand is Ray. How do you think that his brand works in this kind of context as a wedding filmmaker?
Well, so like Ray has a couple things going for him. He's done it a long time.
Sure.
He's good.
He's able to sell wedding planners based on him, his company, his reputation, all
Yes.
these things, and not necessarily have him be the person on site doing the shooting.
Yes, and there's also people who are in the industry who look up to him, who might be like, "Oh, I want to work with that guy," and
Yeah.
you know, and they're good and they're willing, they're able to probably somewhat do what Ray can do, you know, so the brand helps in that way. It does a lot of things for him that allow him to make more money than he could have made just being, you know, the average wedding filmmaker doesn't have that many things working for them. So I think like building a perpetual, like a self-perpetuating personal brand that allows you to take your hands off.
Yeah. Do you think, you know, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but do you think it does limit a person or at least works against a person when they make the name of their studio their last name or their full name? Or
I mean, I don't have experience with that, but it seems like it would.
Yeah, me too. I to me, it seems like it would as well. It just is a hump that we never have had to deal with because we've always had a studio name.
Well, and I just like, I've always been afraid of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never wanted that to be the thing. Like, I've always wanted to have freedom. I never wanted my business. I like, my goal is not to, I don't want to work at my business. I want to own my business.
Yep. Yep.
All right. And like, I think a lot of people, that mentality of like, I am a wedding filmmaker. I am a shooter. It's like, okay, and this is why I was talking earlier about the industry. If you don't even identify as a business owner, why are you owning a business? Why don't you just shoot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can shoot for a long time. You build your contacts up. There's so many other factors besides your health that might make you unable to sell weddings, even when you could still shoot them. Right? And it's like, when we have an industry that doesn't allow for people with different skills to still work, valuable skills that are still, the market would still pay money for. But because they can't jump through every hoop, they just can't jump through any hoops. And I think that sucks. Like, I bums me out that like, I can't just pay like editors $1,200 an edit. And someone can make like $70,000, $80,000, like a very solid living just editing wedding films.
Yep. So this is kind of getting into like probably the third different option for staying in the wedding industry, which is mature the industry, right? It's you know, you can run a studio, you can have a really solid self brand that perpetuates, you know, growth even when you're not super involved. I wouldn't say Ray necessarily runs a studio.
No, he doesn't run a studio, but he has associates.
But he has associates and he runs a really strong brand.
And he pays editors.
This third way is collectively, this isn't something necessarily you can do by yourself, but collectively we can grow the industry by hiring people that have special skills, right? Like, I'm an editor.
Create a place for people. Be more
Right.
inclusive, like, and be more strategic. Like it's just like a classic American problem. If you're not from America, you're listening to this. Maybe whatever you're coming from, this isn't your context. But in America, it's like, oh, I really support like Made in America. Okay, here's this T-shirt. It's made in America. It's $25. I'm not gonna buy a $25 T-shirt. Okay, you don't support. Okay, great. Then enjoy your, Korean T-shirt. There's nothing wrong with that, having something made in Vietnam or China or something, but it does mean that like you're outsourcing things that could help grow your local industry. Wherever you're listening to this, if you're in India or wherever, like the best thing for everyone is that your local economy is improved and your
nationalization. Everything should just be nationalized.
We need to run it through the state.
Yeah.
State-run wedding filmmaking.
Yeah.
No, it's like,
oh, those would be so good. Yeah.
can you imagine if the state of Massachusetts made a wedding film company? The Rhode Island would be a worse one.
Oh yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
the state, Tourism video for Rhode Island.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's so, yeah.
What was the slogan again?
So, full context. Rhode Island made a tourism video a couple years ago. Providence, Rhode Island is apparently the creative capital of the United States, by the way. So creative that they went all the way down to New York to get an ad agency.
The self-proclaimed creative capital.
Yeah, self-proclaimed, very much so, I would say, because they have RISD and Brown, But anyways, they created this slogan called "Cooler and Warmer," which no one really knows what it means. Like, it's cooler, like, hey man, this is a really cool place to be, but also it's cool. It's cool
warmer than you think.
Cool and breezy, but it's also can be warmer than
It's warmer than you think,
Like, what?
That's like a
and the
selling
logo
point.
that they made was like as bad as you would imagine it would be.
I just imagine that it's a sun with blue waves.
Yeah. But it was like the governor being like, "That sounds great! Like,
This is awesome."
The governor knows tons about branding. Clearly,
Yeah. State-run wedding filmmaking companies. No, what I'm really talking about is just like,
which is sad, by the way. Before we move on, because the parks branding, incredible, right? United States, like national parks, beautiful. Where did that go?
well, they I know a little bit about that. They have national parks have bidding. You can go to these companies and compete for these bids, and they get like really big agencies. They're huge contracts.
But that's what they did in Rhode Island. But it's just the people making the decisions at the top were like, "Yeah, that looks good. That looks just as good as the national parks that they did back in the 30s." Yeah, it's good. Looks
what
good to
were
me.
we even talking about before this?
Branding.
Oh yeah. Like,
but creating an industry.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, the idea is that more people can work in the industry and do things that would provide fixed incomes or reliable incomes and retirement plans and strategies, and there's just more opportunities for people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people whose businesses, if there were more opportunities, a lot of these guys who are I tried to run my own thing, I failed, but I'm still a good shooter. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really exist now.
Yeah.
There's always a person who just wants to moonlight for one of these big and I think that's the other side is Jared and I are just so anti those companies. We want them to be put out of business.
These booking agencies?
Yes. And they're not gonna get put out of business by scolding with time.
Yeah.
And people are like, we gotta raise the boats. And I always tell people, it's you don't understand business. If you think that the way that we're gonna improve wedding filmmaking is to complain or charge more money, you don't realize that you're just thinking the wrong way.
As an industry, you're talking about.
Yes.
Not individual.
The
wedding
customer.
films. Yeah.
Is always going to find someone to do it cheaper. Mm-hmm. You cannot ever have a conspiracy. And by the way, I think it's illegal, by the way, to have price fixing. You can't have a conspiracy where you get every single person to agree to not do a wedding film for less than X dollars. There's always going to be a need for a lower cost option in any market. And so there's always going to be a place for there's always going to be someone who wants to buy a $2,000 both photo and video. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be better if that was your money?
Yeah.
Maybe better if it was your time,
right.
But if you had a bunch of people with integrity making that money instead of a bunch of people who are literally just guys who've never even shot a wedding before but run AdWords campaigns.
Or wouldn't it be better... The quality of work would be better. Less couples would get screwed as well if those companies, those booking agencies, instead of being a booking agency where they're just hiring a bunch of contractors to edit in, Indonesia and then a bunch of, people on the ground to do the shooting in their local area. They're going on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever, to find these people. Instead of that, what if these booking agencies were actual studios that hired employees that gave their employees that long-term security.
And a fair living wage.
A fair living
by the way,
wage where
that
they
would-
could work till they're 60.
That's what would actually.
That's what we're talking about.
That's what would actually raise the prices.
Right.
What would actually raise the prices is if the cost went up. And if people would evaluate their business based on cost instead of how much gross income they want to make. Like literally the way that wedding filmmakers operate their business is like the most rudimentary understanding of money possible.
I agree.
It's like I'm averaging like just like quite literally when I'm like, oh wow, like when you say to someone like, oh, yeah, I'm charging $10,000 these days. What do you mean by that? Well, I mean, one time I charged $10,000.
Yeah.
You're like, that's not what you're charging.
Yeah,
What's your
yeah.
average sale?
Yeah.
Well, it was
And also, it was a 4-day wedding, and
it was like, and I had to deliver 700 hours of film. It's like, okay, like it's not equal,
Yes.
like right. And so like that's how they think about money, right? It's all the vanity metrics and nothing else. And like an industry ran by wise people who with any kind of like foresight and willingness to consider the implications of what it all means, they would be thinking about like, are we building an industry that allows us to retire? Like what are we doing here? And I know like for us, it's easy. And I say this because I'm not saying this like, we don't have to talk about this. We could just keep doing what we're doing. Because we're making money off other people's ignorance. The fact that other people aren't running their business better is good for us. And so like if anyone is hearing this, like these guys sound so arrogant, it's like, no, you don't get it. Like I don't have to talk about this. It doesn't benefit me to tell everyone that their thinking is wrong. It'd be much better for me to just keep capitalizing on everyone's bad thinking.
Sure.
Like financially.
Yeah.
But that's not what we want. We want to help grow people and grow the industry. And so we don't have all the answers either.
Yeah.
So we're not coming.
Well, and we're coming at it like if someone's like, oh, what is the benefit to like you guys telling us this? Like you guys are just, what is the benefit? I think the benefit is like, I mean, probably either way, our business is probably going to be pretty good. But I think if we have a more mature industry, that means the consumer has more confidence in our industry. That means more people book. That means higher rates for everybody. That's how you make a stronger industry and everyone gets paid more money. Everybody.
Yes.
Like that's how you actually raise all boats. And
Well, it's one of those things where it's like
it's not just individuals charging more money, because individual companies charging more money is a flash in the pan philosophy. Like an individual
what is the
who's like
30-year earnings of every person in the industry is what we're talking about.
compared to yes.
So if someone's like, I charge average of $3,000 a wedding film for 3 years. So you made what? How much money did you make? Oh, I made $270K.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. You made $300K over 3 years, and then you flamed out, or maybe you're slowly declined or something. So maybe $500,000 in the life of your career. I would much rather people make 1.8 million, 2 million in the life of their career.
Right. And
That's
have
how you
people,
need.
have people, and I also think there's benefit to people being in an industry for 20, 30 years and not just moving around all over. Like you can move around companies, but staying in an industry and understanding the industry, understanding how wedding films are evolving. And,
And even
then,
being able to like put up a fight against wedding planners who are cheaping us out. Like,
Sure.
Like
And-
the
and-
fact that there's always someone at the bottom willing, like I don't believe in undercutting really, but like if there was more standardization across the board, they would know, people who are buying this stuff would know that this is just how much it costs.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be confidently saying, well, I can't do that. I have employees.
Yeah.
I can't do that. It costs me too much money to make that. Instead of like, well, like, I mean, okay, I want $2,000, and
Right.
That's better than $0.
Right.
It's like,
No, the truth is, people are able to be sniped and, undercut by even wedding planners to be like, well, I can't have you charge that much. My couple just won't get it. Will you do it for this? It's like, if there were more people having legit businesses that are just like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I can't do that.
I can't do it.
Like that's like literally it. I can't
Then it just
afford
creates
it.
an expectation of what everyone else can assume. And honestly, I mean, guys, there's a reason why videographers charge less than photographers. It's because they are much more established in a much more mature industry than we are. I think there's a lot more components to what we do. And traditionally, photography has been like the golden service for everyone. I do think that's changing just by culture and the world.
I'm
and social
talking to
media.
planners all the time now who are now acknowledging that what we do is harder
Yeah.
and not understanding why it's cheaper. And they're also telling me photographers are out of control with their pricing.
Yep.
all
So
the
get
time.
ready, because that part of it is changing. The understanding of what we do is changing. So we need to shape up quick. And I think we have this window of opportunity before everything gets outsourced or before technology changes the industry and reshapes everything completely. Who knows what's in the future when it comes to that?
The other side of it is like, in relation is like, we tried to hire editors for our outsourcing company, right? I couldn't find anyone who's willing to do it for the prices that you people who want edits from us are willing to pay. So everyone wants good, like everybody's like, there's nothing wrong with overseas editing, but everybody in the States wants a person in the States. That would be like the dream editor, right? They want a great editor who's good, who they don't have to explain. Like they want themselves.
Yeah.
Which I
And
guess
they want to pay someone like themselves $200.
Yes, exactly.
edit.
And so you're like, that's a factor of the way that they set their business up. They don't know it, but it's like they're dead when they sold the contract. So, because if they were like, oh, I'm going to pay someone $1,000 an edit, so I'm raising my prices $1,000 because I want to pay for an editor.
Yeah.
Instead of, I'm raising my price $1,000 because I'm suddenly better and I want to make more money.
Yep.
That's how people think. And it's like, that is what you guys have to change in your thinking.
Yep.
It's like, I'm going to raise my prices to pay more cost.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to pay for a better second shooter and I'm pay for a better editor.
Because it doesn't necessarily make you more money to charge that extra to bring someone else on, but it makes your edits much faster, much more consistent, and it allows you to take on more work.
And it allows you to build an industry, or maybe
right.
you hire the person. Maybe you are budgeting $1,000 a film and you end up saying, oh, now I can shoot 40 weddings,
Yep.
right? Or 50. I'm willing to go out and shoot 50. I just don't want to edit them.
Yeah.
So you might turn your business from a $200,000 gross business to like a $400,000 business overnight, just by paying someone $50,000 to edit your films.
Yep.
And that thinking is so, people don't think that way at all, Jared.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
It's like that's all I'm really addressing. Is not so much that there are these people out there willing to do the jobs. I just know like the mindset that the average wedding filmmaker has will make sure they're never those people. And that most people will never be able to retire, and the average person will end up at the end of their career destitute.
Yep.
With no prospects.
Yep.
So don't do that.
Or if they, are successful, it won't be in the wedding industry.
Yes. Yeah,
They'll
which
move on.
that's
So,
okay.
yep.
That's okay. And all of it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone. It's not for long term.
But I think for a lot of people, the uncertainty of moving on to another industry could keep people up at night.
Yes.
Could be stressful. And some people won't be as successful in their next job as they were as a wedding filmmaker, or they didn't have the amount of freedom or the luxury that I think wedding filmmaking brings a person.
Someday we'll come up with a little class or something. We've always thought about like how can we help people establish a studio. We'd love to hear from you guys if that's like interesting or where are your pain points on this. Give us a shout out, because head over to Instagram or whatever, or DM us or something. Because for us, it's always like, are people even interested? Like I've had people tell me in education like, oh, we don't really want you to speak at this event
about building teams or whatever.
Yeah, they're like, well, you're more of like a volume guy, and I'm like, no, I'm not. Like I train wedding filmmakers like to make wedding films, and I did it successfully, and I'm
not
like,
just on our podcast, but for a studio
and
with
freaking real life.
dozens of people.
I've trained more people than most anybody in the wedding industry.
Yeah.
So real people, not just people who went to my class for one day.
Yep.
Like they are professional shooters.
Yeah.
And so like I know firsthand. I remember we went to, there's this one guy at a conference We went to a conference, and he just kept roasting us in Facebook because he's like, "Oh, volume filmmakers, wedding factories, wedding mill," and I'm always like, "Dude, like, you don't get it."
Yeah.
You didn't even look at our work, by the way. But second of all, it's like, my point is, I know the stigma.
Yeah.
I know that when we say build a studio or anything about this, that there's an immediate like,
I remember that, dude. I wonder if he's even in the wedding industry anymore.
yeah, or it's just like the stigma that associated with not doing anything associated with your wedding filmmaking is negative.
Yeah, totally.
And that needs to change.
Yep. So, guys, I mean, this is a lot to take on. I think, again, this is probably...
Now go implement all of this.
Yeah, go do it now in one swoop.
What did we even talk about? It was like the most unfocused podcast.
Yeah, but I think it's unfocused because, again, there's no structure. I haven't heard planners talk about this, photographers talk about this, anyone in our industry talk about retirement.
Well, I've
whatsoever.
tried to even think about how to talk about it. It's such a challenging subject because the answers are they're like generational answers.
Sure.
It's like a 20-year problem.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a lot of uncertainty into the future. There's a lot of just trying to figure out where we are as an industry right now, but also trying to project like where we'll be in 10 years. Like, because again, like all of this could be totally uprooted by just something as new as like
Kids
technology.
just walking around with their phones and just shooting
Yeah.
a TikTok of a wedding and leaving.
Or a Star Wars droid or something. I don't know. But whatever it is, like technology is always, changing. The last thing I would want to say is like we're irreplaceable, like because truck drivers are about to be obsolete, like and replaced. So it's like, who knows? But
who knows?
Anyways,
I
things
would
to
think
think
we're.
about.
I think we are probably ascending. By the way.
Yeah, I think so. Just based on numbers and conversations that we have. So hopefully this is just like, it forces you to think about some things. Hopefully it gives you some hope and some options to maybe think about, talk to your family about, and just try to figure out, like, we're at a stage right now for where most of us are kind of dipping down into our off season, unless you're in Florida or somewhere like crazy hot where it's actually opposite wedding season. But for all of us, I think it's always good. Yeah, in the new year, I always like to look at our business as a whole and be like, where are we going? Like, where are we going to be in 5 years, 10 years, whatever? And not even necessarily get it down on paper, but just be thinking through problems like of the future. So hopefully this has been inspiring to you. Like any podcast, I think we really want to just raise questions that people haven't thought about a whole lot to make them think about it and apply it to their own business. So hopefully that was the case. Jay, where can people find us? What do you want people to do through Wedding Film School right now?
I want you, this is what I'll say. If you listen to this and you were like, I want to talk about this with someone, go sign up for a coaching session. This
podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Yeah, we have.
If you want to talk to someone,
and they're, I don't think they're not cheap, right? Because my time is valuable.
Yeah.
And Jared's time is valuable, and we don't really want to be talking to people who don't value me at the time I can make money on something else. So that being said, I will say, like, investing in yourself is valuable.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you've heard me talk about it, and this is the subject that like triggers your mind, I would encourage you to do that. Like, and sign up, and we can talk and say, like, how are you set up?
Yeah. You have coaching sessions on the website that people can
weddingfilm.school, and you can do a coaching. But also get a financial advisor. Like, go get someone to help you set up, at least get a Roth IRA if you're in America, or like start doing something about it.
Yeah.
Whether it be raising your prices or getting write down the options for you that you're like, okay, this would be interesting to me. Like, I want to move in a commercial, or I would love to build teams, or I would love to just get to a certain price point that I can retire and just, freaking be Jack Dorsey in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to be doing, like, put it down and like get it out of your brain and make it a real thing, and either talk about it with someone or just start acting on it. Don't just think like, I have this one bill at home that it's a dumb bill. It's not even a lot of money, but for 2 weeks, I'm just like, I don't want to open that bill. just want to look at it. It's just like, I don't know why. It's just like an obligation. I don't want to think about it. It's a problem. It's like, and I'll probably forget about it. It was like a stupid, like, I had to update my credit card for my Easy Pass for the tolls. You know, and I just didn't. I kept putting it off, and then I got like a fine on it, and I was like, darn it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, don't do that. Don't procrastinate this. Put some action into it now before you really have to deal with the actual pain.
Right.
Like, live in the pain today.
Yep.
Like, before it's the real pain.
Sure. Yeah, just approaching your problems and actually knocking them out. Guys, I would say if you haven't, check us out on Facebook and YouTube, Wedding Film School. Also, we have a YouTube just specifically for this show called The Wedding Film School Show.
If you want to see us talk.
If you want to
Our
see us
studio's
talk.
pretty cool.
And then also on Instagram, The Wedding Film School Show. That's where you can find us over there. Anyhow, hopefully this has been an interesting conversation to you. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you next time right here on The Wedding Film School Show.